would like to call to order the joint meeting of the Board of Directors and Citizens Advisory Committee of the Monroe County Solid Waste Management District. Yeah, I was about to say that. Would you all care to join us a little bit more closely?
We're going to have a couple up here, and otherwise maybe sit in the front row there and utilize the podium.
There's mic.
Yeah.
Oh, there's also a mic over at the podium.
And just, do we have a quorum of the CAC?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. That sounds great. Well, why don't we deal with the item that's most time constrained first? And that would be I know this format isn't ideal for a kind of joint meeting work session. But
I was going to say, does Joseph have to call their meeting to order also?
oh, well, did you do that last time?
Okay.
Okay. Well, our first topic is the rebranding launch. And I'm not sure who's going to lead that discussion, but my understanding is that of course, our rebranding consultant is here and is going to give us an update. So welcome to the podium.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrew Lambert, and I'm the president of Lambert Consulting, and I've been the gentleman that has made Tom McGlasson cry multiple times. I mean, helped with this project. Is this on record? Okay, so no, Tom and Joe and many of his staff have worked with me for the better part of this year to rebrand, relaunch, and ultimately revamp the recycling district. So I appreciate being here today. Am I providing an update so far, or do you guys have questions, or how would you like to handle this?
I would think, could you provide a little more update on the project, and then we can ask questions?
Yeah, that's fine. So what started last January was a movement to go away from Go Green. So just a brief history, when I came into Tom's life and his staff's life was almost a decade ago, they were just moving to what was called Go Green District. And my predecessor was leaving town, and I was brought in to help facilitate that move, which again has been here for, I want to say, about 8 years now. And there's been a discussion of maybe changing the format a little bit, giving a little bit more of a professional undertone in terms of title and coloring and such. And so I was contracted really for 2 phases. One was to go through the system to figure out the best name choices, the best color choices, and how that would be applied to any of the online stuff we do, social media, website, etc. And then phase 2 was actually the implementation once the board approved the new name, the new colors, and all that. And as we speak, we are doing little hints online, a little fun kind of Easter eggs through their social media, with a final announcement the week of the 25th, and then a new rollout of the website right after the new year, probably the 3rd or 4th. So while the website itself is not going away, we do have new domains secured at this point in time, and slowly we will take the Go Green coloring and logos away, and the new stuff will come into play. So as far as I know, we're keeping all the pages and relevant information intact. That may change in 2024 as things continue to shift, but for right now, we do have agreed upon a new look, a new feel, and a new brand that's going to be good for 2024.
Great, thank you. Well, let's try to keep this as informal as possible. So, anyone have any questions, either from the CAC or from staff or from the board?
I just would also add, Ms. Pocrawl is attending the meeting on Zoom and has been working with Mr. Lambert in the past few weeks to help develop some of the media scripts and press releases that will be going out the end of this year, first of next year, to helping to launch the rebrand.
Oh, good to see you, Ms. Pocrawl. Do you have any comments or anything you want to say?
Yes, Elisa Pocrawl, Community Outreach Coordinator. I'm in following the guidelines, kind of the strategy of Andrew Lambert. I've put like 2 teasers on, 2 per week, starting on December 4th. We started that. And then the actual announcement will come on the 26th. All the media is set to go. the radio and the TV. I've written the press release. And then we're also, the other thing I wanted to say is that the public, judging from the hits on the social media post, they like the intrigue. There are quite a few hits on that. So it's proving to be a very successful strategy. Wow. The other things that we're doing, I'm working with West Lasher, a production house, to insert the new district logo and website into the Xfinity commercials that we have, the over 55 that we have, that hopefully we'll be able to do that wherever possible so we don't lose those commercials. And then I've written 3 paid public service announcements that will air on both WHCC, Hoosier Country, and their sister station WBWB, which is otherwise known as B97. We've looked at the demographics and the psychographics, and it seems to be a good station that also reached a rural audience. And then along with that contract, it's not just 3 paid PSAs that will rotate. There'll be 10 or 11 of those per month. Then there will be, we're still getting this finalized, but at least 4 15-second sponsorship brought to you ads that will go on the weather sponsorship, and the PSAs will follow on the news sponsorship. So that will appear on both stations. And then with our regular contract with WHCC, we have public service announcements that I've written that have like a challenge and a solution. And so those there are about 7 different ones. Those will rotate, and this year they will also appear on B97. In addition to that, regular, public service announcements are sent to, they're not paid for, but are sent to other radio stations. Most radio stations are very helpful in putting those out. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from anyone? Yes. And I guess, yeah, come to any microphone. The room's full of them.
So I wonder if WFIU Community Minute has been considered as an option for getting the word out. I think
we
WFIU
do have a PSA that I posted to start airing on the 26th for the rebranding. And so that's just something that it's an event, and they do announce that. So WFIU also gets coverage there with the free public service announcement. No, but okay. I've not inquired about that program. What was the name of it again?
Community Minute, where nonprofits get 1 minute to kind of pitch who they are and what they do.
I can inquire about that.
Okay, thank you. I also wanted to ask if there's going to be any activity at the main South Walnut location, or at the rural districts, like in January, like any kind of...
It has been discussed and is a possibility. We are currently still working with potential sign vendors, and doing an event would be dependent on having at least a good amount of the new signage up to do that. So probably not something that's going to happen the first of the year, but the second, third week of January, it is a possibility.
Yeah, Tom and I have discussed like a public offering of some sort, whether that's a partnership with the chamber or one of the other organizations in town. I personally think we should have a commissioner's dance party, but that was voted down. So we'll maybe just a mix and mingle will probably be what it comes out to be. So
you don't want to do karaoke?
I'm okay with that too. Yeah, I got a karaoke hookup if you want that, or we could do a game night, Dungeons and Dragons, whatever you guys want to do. But as long as we get people out, the public out to see what they've worked very hard on, that's a big deal to me too. But to your point, we wanted to make sure that everything was rolled out, all social media was properly updated. I want to add to the Eliza and I have worked very well. We have a YouTube page. I don't know if people know that, because of the amount of PSAs and messaging she has created over the last few years. There's now a great landing page with all that content, and we're in discussions of maybe still keeping that in an archived area. So if anybody was curious about the Go Green years, that's still there for historical record, but then moving forward with any new videos, creating that platform on YouTube as well. So our hope is as we roll this out into the new year, it's not just the signage or the meet and greet, but that everything online that they have touched gets that shiny new look to it.
Thank you. I guess I'd be interested to hear from my colleagues on the board or from the CAC if you have any ideas about an in-person event or any other ways to highlight the new look.
I will add, if I may, I do like the idea of an in-person event as well, and I also wanted to say thank you to Mr. Lambert and Ms. Procrol for all of the effort that was put into all of the outreach.
Correct.
That sounds like a substantial list, and I think it will do a really good job, and I think that an in-person event would really just, I don't know, help kind of bring the community together around it physically as well. I don't have any great ideas for the wheres and the whens, but I am in support of the idea.
I think it might be nice to look at our budget and see if we can do, I know it's probably not the most popular idea again, but to see if we could do some reusable bags or something again with the new logo on it, and just have that, if you have that at every site, and then people start seeing it, and having maybe putting both logos on it the first time around and then just the new one the second time around. But I think that might be a good way to do it. It's more permanent than an in-person event. I'm nothing against the in-person event. I think we could do both.
I like that idea. An in-person event, in principle, I like too. I just think in January, having an in-person event at a rural recycling center is probably not going to draw a lot of people.
You don't think the 60-degree weather is going to hold?
No. It could.
Tom and I have also talked about if you're going to do any of those giveaways, there's a lot of promotional companies right now that make things out of recycled items. So I've kind of championed that if you're going to do a giveaway, at least put that effort into that
Absolutely,
bag
yes.
or squeeze ball or whatever. So
I think last time the bags were made from recycled bottles, weren't
Yes.
they?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
that was the Go Green that has that, and several of the signs that I know Lisa's used at public events were also made out of recycled items
Awesome.
as well.
Yeah, good idea.
That's a good, that would be a good idea. I kind of like that idea of having some kind of giveaway that's made out of recycled bottles, recycled plastic.
Would, and I think Councilperson Piedmont Smith and I have joined Elise out at Walmart and handed out bags as well. So, yeah, there are a lot of ways to do that.
One other thing to know, we did look at the cost of going like with newspaper or Lamar advertising, and it was a little cost prohibitive given the amount of money that had to go into the actual technical design of this and the website that we felt had to take priority. Now, you know, moving forward, I walked in when you guys were talking about budgets. Of course, I love using other people's money wisely. So if we want to talk about a bigger announcement, say in the spring, I've tossed a few ideas to Tom, but that's not part of this commitment right now. It's just a reason why we didn't go that route.
I think it's important to remember to make it public also the logo and kind of the more responsibility-centered language and kind of why we are shifting a little bit, if it's possible to do that, not just for the hell of it, but there was a reason behind this.
So can I address that? The
That
social.
is-
Go ahead,
Excuse
Lisa.
me, go ahead. That is in the copy, so that's covered. That's covered in the radio, well, in the press release that we sent out, it's covered in the messages.
So what we opted to do was look at the kind of how and why within each week, even as we drop in these hints to make sure people understood that it just, we want something new. It was time for the change. I also got confirmation today that we did get fully approved by the state. We had an attorney make sure that the right notices went out to the appropriate parties. And I think Tom has those documents now, or at least they were heading your way.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you addressed that, but the name change was fully approved by the Secretary of State of Indiana and has started to trickle out to the appropriate vendors or partners that needed that notice. So even though the name change publicly will be known January 1, we have already received that state approval.
And those notices will go out to the necessary state and federal agencies, banks, and vendors starting next week. And along those lines, I think important to note, that it's a full and legal name change, but that's all that it is. Our tax, our tax information, tax ID number is not changing. From as far as who we are and what we do, none of that is changing. We've just changed our name and our logo, and trying to present, as Ms. Piedmont-Smith alluded to, a little different perspective of our mission and the responsibility that we all have in undertaking that.
And I think he's being a little modest because even though it's a name change, there was still a lot of accountability at the higher levels of state and federal level. So that's why we went through the legal process that we did. It was good that we didn't have to change everything else. But one of the questions we got back was essentially like, do you know if anybody else in the state of Indiana is using this name? And it's like, I don't have the time to go to every county meeting. So they had to do a little bit of homework for us. But yeah, between Tom and I and the attorney, Steve Douglas, we got full approval.
I'd like to invite you after January 1st to come to the commissioners meeting and present this, and probably also others, so that we can get as much publicity around this as possible, because I think explaining to the public is critical and it'll help it stick.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Just let me know. And then what I would ask is if I could send the images and logos in, and maybe we share that on, and then that way I can walk through where the decisions were made. I know Joe had a lot of good input, so did Tom. So it was definitely a team effort.
I enjoy the ideas of the in-person event as well as the recycled bags. I reuse bags all the time, and I pay attention to what other people are using. And I think that's really great way to use the budget. Another idea could be something as simple as a pop-up tent in high traffic areas. If you want to get knowledge and notoriety, including the giveaway bags at those pop-up tents. You mentioned being at Walmart, so that's a simple way to do it, or potentially on campus, or around other events that are already going to attract a lot of people. The Winter Farmers Market doesn't pull a ton of people, but just having a pop-up tent and that consistency over a period of time will enable people to become much more familiar with it, and it'll be, the familiarity is key.
Thank you. Anybody else? You want Mr. Ham? Go ahead.
All interesting and good. I think, and I'm sorry if I don't follow this as much, but I think the question that I might want to be ready to answer is, is there any behavioral difference from our organization that is going to flow from this in terms of name change and programmatic?
I mean, as far as, the residents that use our facilities, other than new signage, they should not notice any difference in how the facilities operate. There'll, be no changes with regard to the way we operate and service our Green Business Network customers. That's it. The name change is really more about, I guess, having a name that more better represents what we're already doing. So we don't anticipate any changes with regard to how we provide services and programs. We just wanted a name that we thought better represented what we're doing and what our mission is.
Okay, I do think it's an opportunity, it doesn't have to be immediately, but to build public interest and support is to have something with it that is a new service or a new program. The giveaways are one way to do that, but it's an opportunity to, for example, invest some of our surplus in a way that says this is what we do, we're committed to this, and to show we mean it, here's what we're going to do over the next 12 months or something like that. Just an idea.
Well, I think that perhaps something might come out of the next agenda item that, the possibility of developing an organic waste task force might lead us in that type of a direction.
And I'll just add, if I may, I think that a lot of the rest of the contents of the 5-year management plan also speak to those things. There are a lot of education efforts, a lot of focus on source reduction and waste diversion. So I think the 5-year plan is perhaps what you described, and this is one element of that reflects the contents of the 5-year management plan.
Anything else related to the rebranding launch?
I just, before the agenda item, excuse me, I just think that we would be remiss if we didn't really fully acknowledge the input and effort of the CAC, and in particular, Joe Winia, in helping with the logo in particular. Some of his computer and technical expertise was really, beneficial in getting that logo together.
Thank you.
I'll add that it was actually a real pleasure to do, and I was grateful for the opportunity to participate in all of it. So thanks to everybody involved in the process as well.
All right. Anybody else? Thank you very much for stopping by, Mr.
Yep.
Lambert.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much for your trust in this, and I look forward to the big rollout here in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And one last note, we are preserving the gogreendistrict.com for 1 year. So if anybody goes there, since there is still a lot of marketing out there, it will be automatically forwarded to the new domain. So for historical records, we will keep everything on our server for 1 year. And then at that point, Tom and I will decide if it's time to archive it or just toss it. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, what was the main domain that we decided on?
wastereductiondistrict.com.
That's right.
And that will be the primary domain for at least the next year, because they were available. We did also retain the rights to wastereductiondistrict.info.net and .org.
So should anybody go to those, they will also be forwarded back to the .com as well. So even if there's a mistake made by a user, they'll still get to where we need to go. And Tom, can you give them the full name? I think we've talked about it, but what's the full new name we're going towards?
Oh, well, the full new name of the organization will be Waste Reduction District of Monroe County.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next item is the development of an organic waste task force. And so, let's see, who is planning to lead that discussion?
I will defer to Mr. Winnie on this one. It was his suggestion to have this as an agenda item.
Sure, yeah. I'll introduce it by just noting this is mostly a follow-up to our last joint meeting on July 13th, when we had talked about the allocation of, I was also following the budget presentation. So we talked about the potential of, or I guess the interest in allocating additional funding to organics waste management. And then the question was how would the structure be of the decision around how that would be allocated? So the idea of potentially composing a task force, I think at the time it was proposed of it being between the board and the CAC, but Ms. Piedmont-Smith also mentioned at the executive committee meeting that it could go beyond that to include other members of the city and county to be a little bit larger. So just wanted to, I guess, have a discussion about how that shape might look and get that process going so that we can start those conversations going into the next year.
So I do have a question about that, but does anybody else have a question or a comment about? I guess, so is your thought that, or is the concept that the organic waste task force its role would be both to provide policy recommendations, but also to play some role in allocating of what grant funding may be provided by the district? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
That's essentially what I had in mind for it. I mean, it could be as big as we would like for it to be, but I think that was really the most core and essential idea, was just that conversation around sort of the district's intent for the funding that it's allocated and how we would try to find ways to allocate it and advise on opportunities too.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I know absolutely nothing about organic waste other than what I've learned in these meetings, and so I would love the idea of getting citizens that are knowledgeable and interested involved and give them some say in how the resources are used.
Are there any preference among board members as to who would be interested in participating, or thoughts on the size of the group? Ms. Jones?
I think as the group continues to work, it needs to be flexible enough to take in new members. So for example, if the movement goes toward restaurant waste and dealing with that directly, then you want to bring restaurateurs on board. But if it goes toward residents, then that's a different group of people. I think there should be some initial meetings and then some decisions made once those initial meetings have occurred.
I mean, is this something that we would want to also reach out to? The city and county both have environmental commissions, sustainability committees. I mean, do we, even potentially representatives from the IU sustainability? I mean, I'm just, I guess, asking, how big do we want this to get with, big can become unwieldy, but big can also open a lot more doors.
I'm chair of the County Environmental Commission, and I think they'd be very interested in hearing about this and helping to promote whatever comes of it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean the whole committee has to be on there,
No.
but there may be some members who want to join.
Right,
Well,
a representative from a number of different
and I am a
bodies.
member.
Knowledgeable and interested.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think small is agile, and I think there's a benefit there, so.
So perhaps then we could start with that small core group and then have discussions about who might be candidates for inviting to the group. Does that sound like a reasonable start between the CAC and the board as the sort of initial members? And then the first meeting could be a discussion about who then participates after, or who to invite at least to participate.
That sounds like a good idea to me.
Okay.
I mean, I guess one question is how formal, how much formal apparatus needs to be done? Is this something that would be done by a resolution of the board? Do we want to, go so far as to, a lot of boards and commissions, they have specific number of members that are considered, the board members, and that's where quorums are calculated? Or do we want to be more informal?
Informal.
Informal, I think a working group is,
Yeah, I would, at least initially,
Yeah.
and until, that group or, we would get to a point that we are starting to looking at recommending
Allocating
action
money.
or
Yeah.
something like that.
That's a good idea.
I just wanted to add, and Tom knows this, I think part of it, but one, the City of Bloomington Utilities is expecting a major report back now in Q1, first quarter of next year, on the waste to energy approach, and that will, I think, drive whether they move that way. If they do, that's a big deal for kind of a 50-mile radius plan for organics, but we don't know that yet. Two, it's I guess I just want on your radar too, the group we call it Project 46. It's the Regional Climate Alliance, and to the extent that some of this may start to implicate regional opportunities, that may be worth thinking about too, connecting with that. And that group is going to be trying to generate both programs and some resources for that. So if it has a regional component, potentially that could be useful too. So thanks.
Thank you.
Is there any other, feedback from the board that you would like, Mr. Winia?
I think so. Would you be interested, Mr. McKim, in being a participant in that group? In being a member of like the initial core task force group?
I mean, I would certainly be willing to participate. Yeah.
Okay. I think if we're going with informal then, and so we have Mr. McKim and Ms. Jones as participants, I myself would be interested in being a participant. Any other members? Okay.
And I'm on the Commission on Sustainability with the city, so that takes care of that.
All right. And are there any other members present? Tom? Okay, Mr. Inglassen as well. Okay, I think from there we could probably just go with electronic communications to try to coordinate an initial meeting. If that works
Sounds
for
great.
everyone. Okay.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton, for the actual extra information as well.
All right. If there's nothing else on this item, we can move on to the 5-year plan progress update.
Again, I will defer to Mr. Winia, who suggested this agenda item, and also note Ms. Kayla Strand from staff is attending on Zoom, by request to help look at how we're tracking, how we can track in the future the 5-year plan progress.
think I'll start by asking if Ms. Strand or Mr. McGlasson, who are already logged into the meeting, have the ability to quickly and conveniently share at least a portion of the proposed plan reporting document. I am not presently in the meeting, and I could be to display. But in short, there is a document that was designed by the Implementation and Evaluation Guidance Working Group from the CAC to basically provide a easy, convenient format to the district to be able to just enter information over time about progress on the 5-year management plan goals. So there's basically 2 main categories of goals. There are some that are recurring on some sort of monthly or quarterly basis where there's a certain goal of outreach to be done or task to be achieved. And then there's another set of goal types that are more project and progress based, where they basically would just have like a semi-annual or annual sort of check-in summary or report. So this is just basically an organized way to have all of those objectives, those goals and objectives, with a line for each item, so that if it's achieved or if a step is taken towards it, it can just be annotated at the time, and then collectively over the course of the year, it will provide a pretty concise, structured yearly summary of the progress, or could be checked in at any time. So the goal was to present this to the district staff as a tool to use, get feedback on it, see how it looks, and that's sort of where we are in the process. Tom, do you happen to have any information on, or from Kayla, about perspective on the document and its format and its utility?
Well, I mean, Kayla hasn't had a lot of time with this. You know, it was not necessarily something that was on her radar when she was brought in, so she and I, you know, I've shown it to her and you know, matched things up with the 5-year plan and asked her to kind of look at that, and some of it obviously is going to fall right on line with her, you know, duties and you know what we are envisioned or intended when we brought her in, or things that she has assumed in the meantime. But asked her to look at, you know, what's in there, what makes sense for her to track, what's not going to be, you know, in her bailiwick, and who else on staff might be best suited to try to track those, the progress on those goals or those objectives. But again, you know, we just came up at the executive committee meeting and the idea of having her get involved. So just, you know, a little over a week ago, so she hasn't had a lot of time with it, but you know, would anticipate here in, you know, next couple of weeks, certainly before the end of the year, she should have a pretty good grasp of what's in there and where she thinks responsibility for following various metrics should lie.
So is that really the kind of feedback that you'd like to hear from staff? You know, who would have responsibility for each of these metrics and how they would be collected? Is that?
I think maybe even more generally, just if the format works,
Okay.
and if this would be a useful tool, and if there's anything that the CAC or the working group could do to improve the utility of it, or adjust it to be a better fit, I think is kind of the most valuable next step.
Ms. Strand, did you catch all that?
I did. And I know there are a few things. I had some questions. I know there are certain aspects that we do need to divide up a little bit more succinctly so that we can deal with those, because a lot of them are overreaching over multiple positions, and it's more of a group working on those, or multiple people rather than just one person. So we'll just need to figure that out.
Okay, that's good to know. And the goal of the document was to try to make a shareable version of it, so that it could be basically edited by anyone, rather than to try to make it the sole responsibility of a single person. So I think if there are multiple staff who need to work on it, I would hope that we could find a format where that would be possible as well.
Yeah.
Well, we have an internal shared drive on our network, and if we could house the document out there where multiple staff members can access it, that shouldn't be a problem.
Well, we could always also add this as an agenda item for the next executive committee meeting. Give everybody a chance to look at it and give your team a chance to get more feedback on it. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Anybody else have any thoughts on the 5-year plan?
I guess I would just ask what kind of timeline we are hoping for as far as getting an initial report of how we're doing on the implementation of the plan. The reporting form seems to have, space for each month, so that it's something that's done on a monthly basis, but I don't think the board wants to hear every month. I think we want an annual kind of report. So when would we hope to get that, and what format would that take?
Well, I mean, I guess, are you talking about how often it would be distributed to the board or to the public? I mean, I guess the idea, it seems to me that if you've got a format here where you're tracking things monthly, that can be rolled up to any level of, any level that you want.
I guess part of the question is, do we want the staff to start with January? Do we want them to go back?
Oh, I see, yeah.
And then at what point would it be meaningful for board members to see the update, like end of first quarter? Or, if we're going to use this form, it is that it leads me to those timeline questions.
I think, staff could, staff could go in and start catching up. I mean, some of this stuff has obviously been moving, throughout the course of the 5-year plan, and so I think there's some historical information that could be readily, plotted into the chart even as we move forward with, looking at, any tweaking that needs to be done to it, or figuring out what staff member is the most appropriate for specific items that are in there.
I was going to say too, if I remember correctly, I think some of the things have been achieved, like the rebranding was one of the things. But I can't tell because we only see a couple of months. I can't tell if this metric is strictly month by month or if there are items that are only looked at quarterly. And so it wouldn't make sense even if that's the case. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a quarter.
That it wouldn't make sense to get a monthly report.
Right. I mean, I don't think we want staff to have to do extra work to get us an extra report. I guess, my question is, if you're already filling out this, if you agree that the kind of tracking data in this format makes sense.
Well, I think that's part of the intent of the form is, not to have to generate an additional report. If the board wants an update, here's the current,
this is what it
here's
is.
the current document tracking progress.
And so, it could be included in a packet, for example, with almost no additional effort, assuming you're kind of already tracking the information.
Yeah, I think maybe the only difference would be an opportunity for questions. If, for instance, if the waste reduction specialist were to be present to report on it or to add any comments or answer questions. But I guess the hope is that the document would basically be up to date at most points anyway.
So yeah, kind of like a dashboard.
Yeah,
almost.
exactly. A spreadsheet dashboard. But again, this is completely up for whatever works best for what the board would like to see and what works well for staff. The goal is not to burden them with a task, like you said, to make it an arduous process, but the opposite, just to try to make it a convenient thing where it can be filled in quickly and easily and therefore be maintained lightly.
Okay. Well, it sounds like
would you like more like metric specific things, or is this more of a generalized, like we're making progress on this rather than a like straight number by number? And how often would you want those numbers updated then?
Well, yeah, I think if you look at the spreadsheet as it sits right now, there's a combination, a range of, I mean, some things are specific metrics, you know, how many YouTube viewers in the month of January of a given year, and then also looking at over the course of time, is that trending upward or downward? And so I think I think, you know, both of those, or a variety of those types of measurements are in the document as it exists, depending on the objective or the goal that you're looking at.
Yeah, I'll note that for this draft that was presented, this was all taken straight from the metrics that were provided in the 5-year management plan goals and objectives section. So, I mean, if those should reflect completely everything that was specified in the management plan. So anything more or less than that would be kind of a reflection of what you feel is, or what we collectively feel is practical to be reporting on. So this is just taken right now straight from the plan goal and objectives.
And have we received this latest version? I was saying, I hope I didn't miss an email or anything, but okay. But you can send it out to the board then, so that we can all give feedback.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. We can add this to the next executive session, or executive committee meeting rather, as well. All right. Anybody have anything else to say about the 5-year plan? Are there any other comments or topics anybody wants to address as part of the joint meeting for the good of the order? Well, then, thank you very much. We really appreciate your efforts and participation in the mission. It's important, and we know you take it seriously by the very fact that you're showing up here to work with us on it. So thank you very much. The joint meeting then is adjourned.